The silent moon. The approach. The Twilight Seeker drifted through the void like a silver needle threading through cosmic fabric. Its hull, adorned with the triple-star emblem of the Kelver Collective, gleamed under the distant light of the system's dying red dwarf. Inside the observation deck, Captain Zalthos stood with his forearms clasped behind his back, his crystalline eyes fixed on the view screen displaying the impossible readings that had brought them to this forgotten corner of space. "Captain, the energy signature is intensifying." Science Officer Myron's voice carried both excitement and unease. Her bioluminescent skin flickered in patterns that betrayed her anxiety, a trait her species couldn't hide even after millennia of space travel. "Whatever's down there, it's drawing power from somewhere. A lot of power." Zalthos turned his elongated head toward her station. In his 3 centuries of service to the Collective, he'd surveyed hundreds of systems, catalogued dozens of extinct civilizations, and learned that space rarely offered mysteries worth celebrating. Mysteries usually meant danger. "Show me the moon again," he commanded. The view screen shifted, magnifying their target. Epsilon 7, as their navigation computer had designated it, hung in space like a scarred fist. Its surface was a nightmare of craters and radiation burns, the result of some ancient cataclysm that had stripped away any atmosphere it might have once possessed. Radiation levels were high enough to kill most known species within hours of exposure. It should have been dead. "Completely, utterly dead. Scan depth?" Zalthos asked. 12 kilometers below the surface," Myron replied, her fingers dancing across her holographic interface. "The readings are—" "Captain, this doesn't make sense. The energy pattern is organized. Geometric. It's technology, but the power output suggests something at least Class 4 on the Kardashev scale. Nothing we've encountered outside of the ancient repositories could generate this much energy." Navigation Officer Keksun, a 4-eyed Thalian whose species prided themselves on their caution, spoke up from his station. "Captain, I must advise against investigation. This system is in unregulated space, and our mandate, Zalthos interrupted gently, is to survey and document anomalies that might pose a threat to collective member worlds. An unknown energy source of this magnitude qualifies." He paused, his lateral eye membranes flickering. "But your concern is noted, Keksun. Myron, what are the chances this is a natural phenomenon?" Myron's skin flashed deep purple, the color of absolute certainty in her species. "0, Captain. Natural formations don't generate quantum-locked harmonics. Whatever's down there was built. Recently, in geological terms, within the last 1,000 cycles. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's systems. Zalthos felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like an old familiar cloak. In the Collective, which spanned 273 member species across 47 sectors, discoveries like this were rare. Most of the galaxy had been mapped, catalogued, and explained. This, however, was new. "Prepare a probe suite," Zalthos ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know what we're dealing with before we commit to a landing party." "Aye, Captain," Myron responded, relief evident in her voice. 2. First contact with the impossible. 6 hours later, Zalthos stood in the analysis chamber, staring at the data streams with growing frustration. Of the 5 probes they'd sent to Epsilon 7's surface, 3 had simply vanished. Not destroyed, vanished. Their telemetry had cut out at precisely the same depth. 11.7 kilometers below the surface, the 4th probe had transmitted garbled data for 17 seconds before its systems went haywire and it crashed into a crater, while the 5th probe had made it further than the others, 11.9 kilometers before, sending back a single image that had everyone on the bridge standing in stunned silence. A door, not a cave entrance, not a geological formation, but a door, massive, seamless, composed of a material their sensors couldn't identify, and around it, carved into the moon's bedrock with microscopic precision, were symbols. "Can you translate them?" Zalthos asked, though he already knew the answer from Myron's flickering skin patterns. "Some of them," she said quietly. "The linguistic computer recognizes elements from 47 different extinct languages. Whoever built this wanted to be understood eventually by anyone who found it." She magnified a section of the symbols. "This cluster here, it's a warning. Sealed for the protection of all who fly among the stars. And this one, in what appears to be pre-collapse Vindari script, do not wake what sleeps." "Ominous," Keksun muttered from his station. "Captain, this has all the hallmarks of a quarantine site. We should report to the collective council and let them look at this. Mirren interrupted, her voice strange. She had isolated another cluster of symbols. These ones more regular, almost mathematical. This is a coordinate system. Star charts, but the configuration. She trailed off, her skin cycling through colors rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in her species. What is it? Zalthos moved closer. These are human star charts, Captain. The bridge went absolutely silent. Humans. The ghost species. The civilization that had exploded onto the galactic stage 2,000 cycles ago, with impossible technology and audacious ambition, only to vanish completely 300 cycles later. No one knew what had happened to them. Their colonies had gone dark simultaneously, their ships found drifting and empty, their homeworld Earth silent as a tomb. The collective had sent investigation teams, of course. They'd found nothing. No signs of war, no plague, no ecological collapse, just absence. As if humanity had simply decided to stop existing. It had become one of the great mysteries of the modern galaxy. Dozens of species had studied the abandoned human artifacts, trying to understand their technology, their culture, their sudden disappearance. Entire academic careers had been built on human studies, and now, here on this dead moon in unregulated space, were human symbols, Captain Mirren said, her voice barely above a whisper. If this is a human installation, and it's still active after 3 centuries. Zalthos felt a chill run through his body despite the ship's regulated temperature. The implications were staggering. Humans hadn't just vanished, they might have gone into hiding. But from what and why? I'm going down there, Zalthos announced. Captain, I must protest, Keksun began. Your protest is noted and logged. Zalthos turned to face his crew. But we need answers. If there's even a chance that humanity survived, that they're down there, the collective needs to know. This could change everything we understand about the galaxy's recent history. Mirren stood from her station, her skin flashing determined gold. I'm coming with you. As am I, added Security Chief Vorthak, a towering Kralix whose species had fought alongside humans during the Boundary Wars 2 millennia ago. If these are human ruins, they may still have active defense systems. You'll need protection. Zalthos looked at each of them, saw the determination in their eyes and nodded. Prepare an expedition shuttle. Environmental suits rated for the radiation levels. And Vorthak, bring heavy weapons. If something made humanity hide, I want to be ready for it. Entering the tomb. The shuttle touched down on Epsilon 7's surface with barely a whisper, its landing gear settling into the ash-gray regolith. Through the viewport, Zalthos could see the landscape, a hellscape of broken rock and frozen radiation storms, lit by the sickly red glow of the distant sun. Radiation levels holding it critical, Mirren reported from the co-pilot seat. Our suits will protect us for approximately 6 hours before we start taking cellular damage. Then we don't waste time. Zalthos stood and moved to the shuttle's equipment locker. The environmental suit felt heavy as he pulled it on, its layers of radiation shielding and life support adding bulk to his already considerable frame. Behind him, Mirren and Vorthak were doing the same, checking seals and power levels with practiced efficiency. The outer airlock cycled open with a hiss, and they stepped onto the surface of Epsilon 7. Zalthos had walked on hundreds of worlds, moons and asteroids in his career, but something about this place felt different. Wrong. As if the moon itself was watching them, waiting. The entrance is 200 meters northeast, Mirren said, her suit's HUD projecting a path across Zalthos's vision. The probe's last transmission came from just inside. They walked in silence, their magnetic boots keeping them anchored to the surface in the minimal gravity. The crater wall loomed before them, and as they rounded a massive boulder, they saw it, the door. It was exactly as the probe had shown. Immense, perhaps 30 meters tall and 20 wide, set into the crater wall as if the moon had been carved specifically to house it. The material was unlike anything Zalthos had seen. Smooth as glass, dark as space, yet somehow warm-looking despite the freezing temperatures and the symbols. They covered every centimeter of the rock surrounding the door, carved with such precision that they seemed almost printed rather than etched. Warnings in 100 dead languages. Star charts showing territories that hadn't existed for millennia, and mathematical equations that Zalthos's suit computer flagged as unknown theoretical physics. This is impossible, Mirren breathed. Captain, some of these equations, they're describing space-time manipulation, quantum displacement, technology that shouldn't exist. Vorthak had his weapon raised, scanning for threats. The door, Captain, look. The massive portal was opening, not slowly, not with the grinding of ancient mechanisms, but silently, smoothly, as if it had been waiting for them. A seam appeared down the center and the two halves slid apart, revealing darkness beyond. Someone knows we're here, Zalthos said quietly. Should we call for backup? Mirren asked. Zalthos considered it. But backup was 3 days away at best, and whatever was inside had just invited them in. Turning back now would mean abandoning potentially the greatest discovery in modern galactic history. We proceed, but carefully. They entered. The moment they crossed the threshold, lights activated. Not harsh or blinding, but soft, almost welcoming. They illuminated a corridor that stretched into the distance, its walls lined with panels of technology that hummed with barely contained power. The corridor was tall enough for Vorthak to walk upright without touching the ceiling, and wide enough for 10 beings to walk abreast. Atmospheric readings? Zalthos asked. Breathable, Mirren replied, disbelief coloring her voice. Oxygen-nitrogen mix, Earth standard. Temperature 22 degrees Celsius. Pressure optimal. Captain, there's life support active down here. This facility isn't dead, it's dormant. They walked deeper, their footsteps echoing despite the environmental suits. Every few meters, new panels activated as they passed, lighting their way. And then the corridor opened up. The chamber before them was vast, easily a kilometer across and half that in height. But it wasn't the size that made Zalthos stop in his tracks. It was what filled it. Holographic displays, hundreds of them, floating in the air like ghost screens. Each one showed something different. Star systems, ship schematics, battle formations, data streams in languages both familiar and alien. The walls were lined with technology that made the collective's most advanced equipment look primitive by comparison. And in the center of it all, arranged in concentric circles, were pods. Stasis pods. Dozens of them, each one sealed and glowing with soft blue light. By the first songs, Mirren whispered. Captain, these are active stasis pods. There are people inside them. Zalthos approached the nearest pod slowly, almost reverently. Through the transparent front panel, he could see a face. A human face. Female with dark skin and features arranged in peaceful rest. The readout on the pod side showed vital signs. Slow, incredibly slow, but present. They're alive, he said, his voice hollow with shock. After 300 cycles, they're alive. Vorthak was scanning the other pods. Captain, there are 63 pods in this chamber alone. All occupied, all active. He paused, his translator struggling with his species' expression of awe. This isn't a tomb. It's a shelter, or a garrison, Mirren added quietly. She was standing before one of the holographic displays, her hand passing through the light as she tried to make sense of the data. Captain, these readings. This facility extends for kilometers in every direction. This chamber is just the entrance. There could be thousands of them down here. Thousands of humans, Zalthos said, hidden away for 3 centuries. He turned to look at his crew. But from what? What could make an entire species fake its extinction? The question hung in the air unanswered, and then one of the pods began to cycle, from the awakening. The change was subtle at first, a slight increase in the blue glow. A soft chime that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Then the pod's surface began to frost over. Ice crystals forming intricate patterns as the internal temperature rose rapidly from near absolute zero to human sustainable levels. Captain, we should move back, Vorthak warned, his weapon tracking the pod. But Zalthos stood his ground. Lower your weapon, Chief. If they wanted us dead, we'd be dead already. The pod hissed, pressure equalizing. The front panel began to slide open, releasing a cloud of vapor that billowed into the chamber like fog, and from that fog emerged a figure. She was tall for a human, perhaps 1.7 meters, with dark hair tied back in a practical bun, and wearing a form-fitting suit of material that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. Her skin was olive-toned, and her eyes, when they opened, were a striking amber color that seemed to glow in the chamber's soft light. She took a breath, coughed once, then straightened and looked directly at Zalthos. Kelver Collective Survey Vessel Twilight Seeker, Captain Zalthos commanding, she said in perfect galactic common, her voice rough from disuse but clear. Your arrival was detected at the system's edge 6 hours 43 minutes ago. Your probe incursions were noted and catalogued. Your shuttle landing triggered our automatic revival protocols. Zalthos felt his blood chill. She knew everything. Had been tracking them the entire time. I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human continued, stepping fully out of the pod with the careful movements of someone testing their body after a long sleep. Chief Scientific Officer of New Horizon Colony, former member of the Human Concordate's Advanced Research Division. She walked toward them, and despite Vorthak's towering size and Zalthos's authoritative presence, she somehow commanded the space. Welcome to our home, Captain, though I wish you hadn't come. Dr. Vasquez, Zalthos began, trying to keep his voice steady. Humanity has been missing for 300 cycles. The collective believed your species extinct. We have to know. What happened? Where did you go? Elena's expression was unreadable. She looked at each of them in turn, and Zalthos had the unsettling feeling that she was analyzing them, calculating, deciding how much to reveal. Extinct, she repeated, a bitter smile touching her lips. Yes, I suppose that's what we wanted the galaxy to believe. It was safer that way. For everyone, safer from what? Mirren asked. Elena turned to face her, and in that moment, Zalthos saw something in the human's eyes that made him understand why her species had inspired such fascination and fear during their brief time on the galactic stage. It was the look of someone who had seen something terrible and survived it. Tell me, Science Officer, Elena said quietly, has your collective ever encountered something that defied all your understanding of physics? Something that didn't just threaten individual worlds or even systems, but threatened the very fabric of reality itself? Mirren's skin flickered confused orange. I know nothing like that exists. It does, Elena said. She walked to one of the holographic displays and waved her hand. The images changed, showing space but wrong space. Distorted, twisted as if reality itself was being torn apart. And in those distortions, shapes moved. Dark shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. We call it the Void Collective. And 300 cycles ago, humanity made first contact with them. Zalthos felt his heart skip beats. The Void Collective? Ancient beyond measure, Elena continued, her voice taking on a lecturer's cadence as if reciting facts helped her distance herself from the horror of them. Entities that don't just conquer civilizations, they erase them. From existence, from memory, from the quantum record of the universe itself. They don't want your worlds. They don't want your resources. They want to unmake you as if you never were. That's impossible, Keksun said from the shuttle, his voice crackling over the comm. Nothing can erase quantum information. It's a fundamental law of physics. Elena's smile was sad. The Void Collective doesn't follow our laws, Navigation Officer. They predate them. We learned that the hard way. She gestured and the hologram changed again, showing human ships, massive, powerful vessels that dwarfed anything in the current collective's fleet. Zalthos recognized some of them from historical archives, humanity's pride, their greatest achievements. Then he watched as the dark shapes descended on them, and the ships simply stopped existing, not destroyed, not disabled, erased as if they'd never been there at all. We fought them, Elena said, her voice hollow. For 7 years we fought them with everything we had, and we lost, not because they were stronger, though they were, but because we couldn't fight something that existed outside the rules of reality. Every weapon we used, every tactic we tried, they adapted to it. Or worse, they unmade it before we could even deploy it. So you hid, Zalthos said, understanding dawning. We did more than hide, Captain. Elena turned to face them fully. We faked our extinction. We made the Void Collective believe they'd won. Every human colony, every ship, every outpost, we shut them down simultaneously. Made it look like we'd all simply died out. The few that the Void found, we sacrificed. Made sure they'd find bodies, evidence of our end. It was the hardest decision humanity ever made. But why? Mirren asked, horrified. Why not warn the galaxy? Why not tell us? Because the Void is drawn to knowledge of them, Elena said. The more a species knows, the more they investigate, the more visible they become. Humanity had to disappear completely to become a ghost story so the Void would move on, and so we could prepare. Prepare for what? Zalthos asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Elena looked at him, and in her eyes was a fire that had been burning for 3 centuries. For the counterstrike, Captain. New Horizon isn't a shelter. It's a forge. For 300 cycles, we've been building, researching, weaponizing every branch of physics you can imagine and several you can't. We've been turning ourselves into something the void never anticipated. She walked to a console and placed her hand on it. The entire facility seemed to respond. Lights brightening, systems coming online throughout the vast chamber, more holographic displays activated, showing star charts, weapon schematics, calculations that made Zalthos' head hurt to look at. We've been preparing for war, Captain. A war the void doesn't know is coming. A war fought with weapons they can't erase because they exist in quantum superposition, ships that can fold space-time itself, soldiers trained in dimensional combat. Elena turned back to them and Zalthos saw the weight of 3 centuries in her expression. You shouldn't have come here, Captain. You shouldn't have found us, because now you've done the one thing we've spent 300 years preventing. What's that? Zalthos asked, though dread was already pooling in his gut. Elena's expression was grim. You've shown them we're still alive. As if in response to her words, every alarm in the facility began to blare. The holographic displays all switched to the same view, the space above Epsilon 7, where reality itself was tearing open. And through those tears, dark shapes were beginning to emerge. Captain Zalthos, Elena said, her voice cutting through the alarms with military precision. I need you to tell me right now. Has your collective encountered any unexplained disappearances of ships or colonies in the last 50 cycles? Any regions of space where vessels simply vanish? Zalthos felt his blood run cold. Yes, the Darkward Reach. 3 colonies gone without trace in the last 30 cycles. Elena closed her eyes and for a moment she looked incredibly tired. Then they're already here. The void has been in collective space all along, testing your defenses, learning your patterns. She opened her eyes and they blazed with determination. Tell me, Captain, has the void reached your worlds yet? Humanity's gambit. The truth unveiled. The alarm screamed through New Horizon like the death cry of a dying star. Zalthos watched the holographic displays with mounting horror as the tears in space-time widened, dark tendrils reaching through reality like fingers probing a wound. Captain! Kexon's panicked voice crackled over the comm. Multiple spatial anomalies appearing in orbit. Our sensors are going haywire. These readings are impossible. Get the Twilight Seeker to minimum safe distance, Zalthos commanded, forcing calm into his voice. Full shields, evasive protocols. Do not engage unless fired upon. Captain, we should extract you. Negative. Stand by. Zalthos turned to Elena, who was moving through the chamber with practiced efficiency, her hands dancing across holographic interfaces that responded to her touch like living things. Dr. Vasquez, what exactly are we dealing with? Elena didn't look up from her work. Heralds, the Void Scouts. They don't destroy immediately. They investigate, probe defenses, report back to the main collective consciousness. Her fingers flew faster. We have maybe 20 minutes before they realize this facility exists. After that, they'll call in something bigger. Then we need to leave now. Zalthos moved toward her. Doctor, you and your people can evacuate on our ship. Captain. Elena finally looked at him and the pity in her eyes made him stop. Your ship can't outrun them. Nothing you have can. The Heralds exist partially outside normal space-time. They move through dimensions you don't have names for. She returned to her console. But this facility can hide us. It's designed to be invisible to them as long as we don't do anything stupid like activate main power or... She paused, her expression darkening. Or let alien ships broadcast distress signals that light up the quantum spectrum like a beacon. Zalthos felt his stomach sink. Kexon cut all non-essential transmissions. Go to passive sensors only. Already done, Captain. But I don't think it matters. Whatever these things are, they're... Static burst across the line. Proximity alert! Something's materializing on the hull. Through the holographic display, Zalthos watched in horror as dark shapes began to manifest around his ship. They weren't solid, not really. They seemed to flicker in and out of existence, as if they couldn't quite decide whether to be real or not. Vorthak, Zalthos said quietly. Tell me you're seeing this. The Kralik security chief had his weapon raised, though what good it would do against beings that existed outside normal reality. Zalthos couldn't imagine. I see it, Captain. My ancestors spoke of demons that walked between worlds. I always thought they were myths. They were, Elena said, until the void gave them form. She slammed her palm against a control panel, and suddenly the chamber around them began to change. The walls that had appeared solid moments ago flickered and became transparent, revealing the true scale of New Horizon. Zalthos felt his breath catch. The facility stretched in every direction, a city carved into the moon's crust. Towers of impossible architecture reached up toward stone ceilings kilometers above. Streets and plazas lay empty but maintained, waiting for inhabitants that had slept for 3 centuries. And everywhere were the pods. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, arranged in massive chambers that honeycombed the entire structure. By the first songs, Mirren whispered, her skin cycling through colors so rapidly it appeared white. This isn't a research station. This is a colony, a military colony. New Horizon was humanity's Plan B, Elena said, walking toward the transparent wall that now showed the city's impossible expanse. When we realized we couldn't defeat the Void through conventional warfare, we shifted strategies. We built 12 facilities like this one, hidden across the galaxy in the most inhospitable environments we could find. Places no one would ever think to look. She gestured, and the holographic display zoomed out, showing a galactic map with 12 points highlighted in pulsing red. Each facility was designed to be self-sustaining for millennia. Each one contains between 50 and 70,000 humans in stasis. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, strategists, the best of our species, chosen not for their achievements but for their potential, for what they could become with 300 years to prepare. Prepare for what? Zalthos asked, though he was beginning to understand the terrifying scope of what he was seeing. Elena turned to face him, and her expression was that of someone who had made peace with an impossible burden. To become the weapon captain, humanity couldn't defeat the Void as we were. We were too limited, bound by 3 dimensions, by linear time, by conventional physics. So we decided to evolve, to transform ourselves into something the Void wouldn't expect and couldn't erase. She walked to another console, and the display changed, showing schematics that made Zalthos's translator struggle to find words for the concepts being presented. The quantum displacement engine, Elena said, indicating a structure at the heart of the facility that pulsed with power that registered off every known scale. Humanity's greatest achievement and most dangerous gamble. It doesn't just manipulate space-time, it rewrites the quantum rules that define reality itself. That's impossible, Mirren said, though her voice lacked conviction. The fundamental laws of physics can't be changed. They're universal constants. Universal within this universe, yes, Elena agreed. But the Void exists across multiple universes, multiple dimensions of reality simultaneously. To fight them, we had to learn to do the same. The QTE allows us to step outside the normal flow of causality, to exist in quantum superposition, both here and not here, both now and not now. She pulled up another schematic, this one showing a vessel unlike anything Zalthos had ever seen. It seemed to shift and flow even in the static image, as if it couldn't quite maintain a consistent shape. Our ships don't travel through space anymore, Captain. They fold space around themselves. They can strike at targets in the past, present, and future simultaneously. They can exist in dimensions the Void doesn't know how to reach. Zalthos felt his worldview crumbling. Everything the collective thought it knew about physics, about the limitations of technology, about the possible, all of it was being upended by this one human woman and her impossible revelations. And your people? He asked. The ones in stasis. What are they? Elena's smile was sad. Soldiers in a war that hasn't started yet. Or rather, a war that's been raging for 3 centuries while the rest of the galaxy remained blissfully ignorant. She moved to one of the pods, placing her hand gently on its surface. We've been training them, Captain. Through quantum entanglement, through neural simulation, through methods that don't require them to wake. For 300 years, they've been fighting the Void in dimensions you can't perceive, learning their patterns, understanding their weaknesses. You're telling me, Vorthak said slowly, that humanity has been waging a dimensional war for 3 centuries, while the galaxy thought you were extinct? Yes. And you're winning? Elena's expression grew complicated. We're surviving, which is more than we could say 300 years ago. But winning, that requires something we haven't had until now. What's that? Zalthos asked, the element of surprise. Elena's eyes gleamed. The Void thinks we're dead, Captain. They moved on from human space seeking other prey. They never knew that we didn't disappear, we went dark. Every probe they sent found evidence of our extinction. Every investigation confirmed we were gone. They marked us as erased and forgot about us. She turned back to the holographic display showing the herald circling the Twilight Seeker. But you found us, and now they know we're here, which means the time for hiding is over. 2. The quantum displacement engine. Follow me, Elena said, already moving toward a transport platform that materialized from the floor at her approach. If we're going to survive the next hour, you need to understand what you're standing in. Zalthos exchanged glances with Mirren and Vorthak. Every instinct screamed that they should return to their ship, report to the collective, let others handle this impossibility. But he'd been a survey captain too long to turn away from the greatest discovery of his lifetime. They stepped onto the platform. Elena placed her hand on a control surface, and suddenly they were moving. Not falling or rising, but shifting as if space itself was rearranging around them. Zalthos's inner ear protested, and he heard Mirren gasp as her species-sensitive equilibrium struggled with the sensation. They emerged in a chamber that defied comprehension. It was vast, kilometers across at least, and at its center hung a structure that made Zalthos's eyes hurt to look at directly. It appeared to be a sphere, but also a cube, but also shapes that had no names in any language he knew. It pulsed with light that came in colors that shouldn't exist, and around it orbited rings of energy that moved in directions that weren't quite up, down, or sideways. The quantum displacement engine, Elena said, her voice taking on a note of pride and fear. 30 years of research, 60 years of construction, 200 years of refinement and testing. It's powered by controlled quantum singularities that exist in a state of perpetual superposition, simultaneously real and theoretical. That's madness, Mirren whispered. If those singularities collapse into one state or the other, then this moon and a significant portion of this system ceases to exist, Elena finished. Yes, it's incredibly dangerous, but it's also the only thing that can generate enough power to do what we need it to do. Which is? Zalthos asked. Elena walked toward the impossible structure, her reflection fragmenting across surfaces that were and weren't there. The void exists across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They can move through time in non-linear fashion. They can unmake matter by collapsing its quantum waveform. Conventional weapons can't hurt them because by the time you fire, they've already existed in the moment after you fired and adapted to it. She turned to face them, and the light from the QDE cast her face in shadows that seemed to move independently. But the QDE allows us to do something the void never anticipated. It lets us weaponize causality itself. We can create effects that precede their causes. We can strike at the void in moments before they exist in those moments. We can make weapons that are simultaneously deployed and undeployed, that hit and don't hit, that exist in quantum superposition until the moment of observation collapses them into the most favorable outcome. You're describing retrocausality, Mirren said, her scientific training warring with her sense of what was possible. Backwards causation, effects preceding causes. That violates every law of thermodynamics, yes, Elena agreed, in normal spacetime. But the QDE creates a bubble of spacetime that operates under different rules. Inside its influence, we can rewrite physics itself. Zalthos approached the structure cautiously, feeling the hairs on his skin stand up as he got closer. The air around it seemed thick, heavy with potential energy that could either create worlds or destroy them. How many of these do you have? He asked. Every New Horizon facility has one, Elena said. 12 in total, scattered across the galaxy. Each one capable of projecting its influence across light years. Individually, they're powerful. Together, they can create a quantum network that spans entire sectors. You're planning a coordinated strike, Vorthak said. It wasn't a question. Elena nodded. We've been planning it for 3 centuries, waiting for the right moment. The moment when the void was most dispersed, most distracted, least expecting an attack from a species they thought was dead. She pulled up another holographic display, showing positions throughout the galaxy, points of darkness that Zalthos recognized with growing horror. These are void incursions into collective space over the last 50 cycles. They're testing you, learning your defenses. In another 20 cycles, maybe 30, they would have begun the harvest. Your entire civilization gone, erased from existence as if it had never been. And you weren't going to warn us? Zalthos felt anger rising. You were going to let us die? No, Elena said sharply. We were going to stop them before they could reach you. Strike first. Strike hard. Strike from directions they couldn't anticipate. Cripple them so badly that they'd retreat into whatever dark dimensions they came from and never return. Were? Mirren caught the past tense. Elena's expression darkened. That was the plan. Wait until the optimal moment, then activate all 12 facilities simultaneously. Launch a coordinated assault across the entire Void collective presence in this galaxy. She gestured to the displays showing the heralds above. But you found us, and now they know we're here. Which means we're out of time. As if to emphasize her point, new alarms began to sound throughout the facility. The holographic displays all shifted to show the space above Epsilon 7. More tiers were opening. Larger ones! Oh no, Elena breathed. They're calling in harvesters. Coor, the Void's heralds arrive, the things that emerged from the tiers in space-time made the heralds look benign by comparison. They were massive, each one the size of a small moon, and they moved with a terrible purpose that made Zalthos's hindbrain scream danger. Signals that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. They weren't ships, not in any conventional sense. They were more like wounds in reality. Dark absences where light and matter and time itself seemed to drain away into nothing. Harvesters, Elena repeated, her face pale. They're what comes when the Void decides a civilization is ready for erasure. Each one contains millions of heralds. Each one can unmake a planet in hours. Captain? Kexyun's voice was pure panic now. These things are moving toward us. Our weapons systems are targeting them automatically, but, Captain, every weapons system we try to activate is failing. Not breaking, just not working. As if they were never designed to fire in the first place. Retrocausal disruption, Elena said grimly. The harvesters are collapsing the quantum probability waves that allow your weapons to function. They're making it so your weapons never worked, so they were never invented, so the very concept of defending yourself is becoming impossible. That's insane, Vorthak roared. Nothing can do that. The Void can. Elena was already running back to the transport platform. We need to activate New Horizons' defenses, now, even if it means revealing ourselves completely. They materialized back in the main control chamber, where Elena immediately began inputting commands with a speed that suggested muscle memory from 1,000 simulations. Doctor, Zalthos said, trying to keep his voice level. What about my ship? My crew? Elena didn't pause in her work. I'm extending New Horizons' quantum shielding to cover their position. It won't hide them completely, but it should protect them from retrocausal effects. She glanced at him. Your navigation officer is smart. He's already moving to the coordinates I'm broadcasting. If he's fast enough, he'll make it. On the display, Zalthos watched the Twilight Seeker banking hard, its engines flaring as it desperately tried to reach the coordinates Elena had provided. Behind it, the harvesters moved with deceptive slowness, reality warping in their wake. How long until they reach us? Myron asked. 4 minutes, Elena said. Maybe 5 if we're lucky. And your defenses? Elena's smile was grim, about to wake 300 years of accumulated rage. She placed both hands on a central console, and suddenly every holographic display in the chamber activated simultaneously. Command authorization protocol scrolled by too fast to read. System after system came online, each one powering up with a hum that Zalthos felt in his bones. Throughout New Horizon, in chambers and halls and installations they couldn't see, the pods began to activate, thousands of them. All at once. What are you doing? Zalthos asked, though he could already guess. Waking the garrison, Elena said. All of it. Every soldier, every scientist, every strategist we've kept in stasis for 3 centuries. Because if the Void knows we're here, there's no point in hiding anymore. The chamber around them began to transform. What had appeared to be solid walls retracted, revealing vast spaces beyond, and in those spaces the pods were opening. One by one, then dozens at a time, then hundreds, releasing clouds of vapor that filled the air with mist. And from that mist, humans emerged. They came in all varieties, tall and short, dark and light, young and old. Each one wore the same type of adaptive suit Elena did. Each one moved with the precise, controlled motions of highly trained soldiers, despite having been asleep for centuries. And each one, upon waking, immediately went to their assigned stations as if they'd left them only moments ago. This is impossible, Mirren breathed. How can they be functional so quickly? Stasis revival should take hours of acclimatization. Not when you've been training in quantum simulation for 300 years, Elena said. Their bodies were asleep, but their minds never stopped. They've been preparing for this moment since the day they entered. Stasis, one of the newly awakened humans, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and the bearing of a career soldier, approached Elena. He saluted crisply. Commander Vasquez. Status, Colonel Chen, good to see you awake. Status is code black. Void harvesters in orbit, incoming in 3 minutes. Herald screen already deployed. They found us. Chen's expression didn't change, but Zalthos saw his jaw tighten. All facilities? Unknown. Assuming we're compromised first. I've sent emergency protocols to the others. Orders? Elena looked at the display showing the approaching harvesters, then at Zalthos and his crew, then at the thousands of humans now filling the control chamber, moving to stations and preparing for a battle 3 centuries in the making. We fight, she said. We were going to wait another 20 cycles for optimal strategic positioning. But if the Void wants to accelerate the timeline, then we accelerate too. Activate all defensive systems. Bring the QDE to full combat capacity. And Colonel? Ma'am? Send the signal. Protocol resurrection. All facilities. Chen's eyes widened fractionally. The only sign of emotion Zalthos had seen from him. All of them? Ma'am, that's the plan just earlier than we anticipated, Elena finished. The Void knows we're alive. There's no benefit to stealth anymore. We go loud, we go hard. And we show them what 3 centuries of human spite and ingenuity can do. Chen saluted again, sharper this time. Yes, ma'am. Protocol resurrection. All facilities. He turned and began issuing orders to the teams now manning the stations around. Zalthos watched in awe as new Horizon transformed from a sleeping tomb into a fully operational military installation in a matter of minutes. Holographic displays showed weapon systems coming online. Weapons that violated every principle of physics he understood. Personnel moved with practiced efficiency, speaking in crisp military shorthand that his translator struggled to keep up with. Captain Zalthos, Elena said, turning to face him. Your ship is now inside our defensive perimeter. You and your crew are safe for the moment. But I need to know, does the collective have any advanced warning systems? Any way to detect large-scale quantum disruptions? Our long-range sensor arrays can detect spatial anomalies, Zalthos said, his mind reeling. If what you're about to do is as significant as I think it is, they'll know something happened. Good. Elena's expression was fierce. Because in about 2 minutes, the entire galaxy is going to know that humanity didn't go quietly into extinction. We've been in the shadows long enough. Time to step back into the light. Captain! Kexon's voice crackled over the comm. We're inside some kind of energy barrier now. I don't know what it is, but our systems are stable again. Whatever was messing with our weapons has stopped. That's the QDE's influence sphere, Elena explained. Inside it, normal physics applies. Outside, she gestured to the displays showing the harvesters now less than 2 minutes away. Outside, they make the rules. Not for much longer, Colonel Chen said, returning to Elena's side. All defensive batteries charged. QDE at 80% and climbing. Weapon systems ready. Personnel at battle stations. He paused. Commander, we're getting responses from the other facilities. All 11 are beginning wake-up protocols. Estimated time to full combat readiness, 18 hours. We need to hold for 18 hours, Elena said quietly. Against 3 harvesters and their herald screens. She looked at her displays, at the impossible odds, and Zalthos saw no fear in her expression. Only determination. We've trained for worse, have you? Zalthos asked. In your simulations, did you ever face 3 harvesters with only 1 facility online? Elena met his eyes. No. In our simulations, this scenario ended with New Horizons' complete annihilation within 40 minutes. She smiled, and there was something terrifying in that smile. Good thing we don't plan on following the simulation. The harvesters were 60 seconds out. Humanity's return. All personnel. This is Commander Vasquez. Elena's voice boomed through every speaker in New Horizon, amplified by systems that carried it to every chamber, every corridor, every human who had just woken from 3 centuries of sleep. 300 years ago, humanity made a choice. We chose to hide, to let the galaxy think we were dead. to become ghosts so that we could prepare for this moment. On the displays, the harvesters were 45 seconds away. Reality was distorting around them, space-time bending under the weight of their impossible existence. Today, that moment arrives earlier than we planned, but we are ready. We have been ready for 3 centuries. Every simulation, every training scenario, every quantum combat drill, all of it has led us to this point. 30 seconds. The void thinks we're extinct. They're about to learn that you don't give humans time to prepare. You don't give us 300 years to perfect our weapons, our strategies, our understanding of the very fabric of reality itself. 15 seconds. For 300 years, we've been fighting in dimensions they don't know about. We've been learning their weaknesses. We've been becoming something they can't erase. And now it's time to show them what humanity does when we stop hiding. 10 seconds. Elena's hand hovered over the final control. Around her, thousands of humans stood ready at their stations. The QDE hummed with power that made the air taste like lightning, and Zalthos realized he was about to witness something the galaxy hadn't seen in 3 centuries. Humanity at war. All stations, weapons free. Show them what 3 centuries of human evolution looks like. 5 seconds. For Earth. For the colonies. For everyone we lost. 3 seconds. For the future we're going to build. 1 second. Elena slammed her hand down, and New Horizon went to war. 5. The galaxy will never be the same. The first thing Zalthos noticed was that he could see the weapons firing, but his brain couldn't process what it was seeing. Beams of light. Except they were also somehow beams of darkness. Projectiles that moved both forward and backward through time simultaneously. Waves of energy that didn't travel through space but simply appeared at their targets, as if the distance between gun and target was a suggestion rather than a requirement. And the harvesters, for the first time since they'd arrived, reacted with something that looked almost like surprise. Target Alpha taking hits, someone called out. Quantum disruption at 40%. They're trying to retro-cause our weapons. Countermeasures deployed. Another voice responded, locking causality chains. Their retro-causal influence is neutralized in our engagement sphere. On the displays, Zalthos watched as one of the harvesters tried to do to New Horizons' weapons what it had done to the Twilight Seekers, tried to make them fail by collapsing the probability that they ever worked. But the QDE's influence was pushing back, creating a bubble of space-time where New Horizons' version of causality took precedence. The harvester was wounded, not destroyed, but hurt in a way that shouldn't be possible. Dark energy was leaking from tears in its non-surface, reality bleeding out like blood from a wound. Target Beta is deploying herald screens, Colonel Chen called out. 3,000 heralds manifesting, moving to intercept our fire. Switch to dispersal pattern Omega, Elena commanded. Let's see how they handle multidimensional fragmentation. The weapons changed. Instead of firing at the heralds, they fired at the space around the heralds, at points that weren't quite in the same dimension. And suddenly the heralds were fragmenting, their partially real forms splitting across dimensions they couldn't navigate back from. It's working, Mirren whispered, her skin blazing gold with scientific excitement. They're fighting beings that exist outside normal physics with weapons that exist in even stranger configurations of reality. Incoming, Vorthak shouted. The third harvester had stopped trying to approach directly. Instead, it was pulling at the space between it and New Horizon, trying to fold reality to bring them together. QDE to full combat power, Elena ordered. Colonel, I need a retrocausal strike package. Target that fold attempt 20 seconds in the past, ma'am. That's incredibly risky. Do it! Zalthos watched as the QDE's impossible structure at the heart of the facility began to pulse faster, brighter. And then something happened that made his mind hurt. One of New Horizons' weapons fired, except it had already fired 20 seconds ago, at a position the third harvester had been in before it started its fold attack. The weapon hit the harvester at the moment it began the fold, disrupting it before it could complete the action. Causality had just been violated so thoroughly that Zalthos felt dizzy trying to understand it. Target Gamma is retreating, someone reported. It's opening a dimensional rift. Don't let it escape, Elena said. If even one of them gets back to the main Void Collective and reports that we're alive, they'll send everything they have. Pursuing with quantum missiles. Time to impact, 0 seconds. Zalthos blinked. 0 seconds? They hit at the same moment they're launched, Mirren said, her scientific training finally accepting the impossible. They don't travel through space-time. They're quantum entangled with their targets. The launch and the impact are the same event observed from different reference frames. The third harvester tried to escape through its dimensional rift. But the missiles were already there, waiting for it, having arrived at the moment they were launched. The harvester's structure, such as it was, began to collapse, folding in on itself until it simply ceased to be. Target Gamma eliminated, Colonel Chen reported, his voice betraying only the slightest hint of satisfaction. Targets Alpha and Beta are adapting. They're starting to understand our weapons. Then we change tactics, Elena said. Rotate to configuration Delta 7 and prep the resonance cascade. If they want to adapt, let's give them more variables than they can process. The battle continued, and Zalthos could only watch in awe as humanity fought with weapons and strategies that shouldn't exist. They weren't just firing guns, they were reshaping reality itself, turning physics into a weapon. And slowly, impossibly, they were winning. Commander, Chen said after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, we're getting something on the quantum network. The other facilities, they're coming online faster than projected. 9 hours instead of 18. Why? Elena asked. They're saying... Chen paused, checking his readout. They're saying they can feel what we're doing. The quantum network is transmitting our combat data in real time. They're using it to accelerate their wake-up protocols. Elena's eyes widened. They're learning from this battle, adapting their revival sequences. If we can hold for 9 more hours, Target Alpha is opening a communications rift, someone interrupted. Captain, it's trying to talk to us. Everyone in the control chamber went silent. The heralds and harvesters didn't communicate. They just erased. The idea that one would try to talk was unprecedented. Put it through, Elena said after a moment. Sound filled the chamber. Except it wasn't sound, it was pressure, probability. The weight of potential realities collapsing into a single message that bypassed ears entirely and spoke directly to the mind. Impossible. Humans. Extinct. Erased. Confirmed. Impossible. Surprise. Elena said softly. We got better. Adaptation, evolution, forbidden, stasis, required, harvest, inevitable. Is it though? Elena gestured to the displays showing the wounded harvesters, the eliminated one, the herald screens that had been shattered. Because from where I'm standing, your inevitable harvest is looking pretty evitable. Resistance futile, temporary. More coming, always more. Let them come, Elena said, and her voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of preparation. Let the entire Void Collective come, because we're not just New Horizon, we're not just one facility, and we're not alone. She pulled up a galactic display, and Zalthos felt his heart skip beats. Across the galaxy, at 11 other points, quantum signatures were flaring to life. 11 other New Horizons waking up. Coming online. Preparing for war. For 300 years you thought you'd won, Elena said to the harvester. You thought you'd erased us. But we were just sleeping, preparing, becoming something you couldn't erase, and now we're awake. She raised her hand, and throughout the galaxy, 11 other commanders raised theirs in perfect synchronization across the quantum network. Protocol resurrection is complete. All facilities are active, humanity has returned, and we brought friends. The galactic display zoomed out further, and Zalthos saw something that made his breath catch. Hidden installations across the galaxy were activating. Not just human ones, other species, other civilizations that the Void had supposedly erased over the millennia. Humanity hadn't just saved themselves. They'd been finding and waking the Void's other victims, other species that had chosen to hide rather than be erased. You see, Elena said, humans have this annoying habit. When we find someone who's been knocked down, we help them back up. When we find someone the galaxy has forgotten, we remember them. And when we find species that the Void tried to erase, she smiled, we give them a second chance. Impossible, too many, adaptation required, retreat necessary. Yeah, Elena said. Retreat sounds like a good idea for you. The 2 remaining harvesters began to pull back, opening dimensional rifts to escape. But before they vanished, the lead one sent one final message. Temporary. Victory. Temporary. The Void, eternal, return, inevitable. We'll be ready, Elena said simply. And then they were gone. reality sealing behind them like scar tissue over wounds. The control chamber erupted in cheers, humans embracing, celebrating their first victory in a war that had been one-sided for too long. But Elena just stood there looking at the displays, at the quantum network showing all 12 facilities now fully online, at the hidden allied species beginning to reveal themselves across the galaxy. Zalthos approached her carefully. "Dr. Vasquez, Elena, what you've done here isn't finished," Elena said quietly. "This was one battle, Captain. A skirmish. The void is vast beyond comprehension. They span multiple galaxies, multiple dimensions. What we did today was show them we exist and we can hurt them, which means they'll come back. Harder. With more. But you'll be ready. We've been ready for 300 years. Elena turned to face him, and Zalthos saw exhaustion in her eyes. "But we can't do this alone. The collective needs to know what's coming. Your people need to prepare." "They won't believe me," Zalthos said. "Humans returning from extinction, weapons that violate physics, an ancient enemy that erases civilizations. It sounds like a story from a madman." Elena smiled tiredly. "Then it's a good thing we have evidence." She gestured to Colonel Chen. "Prepare a full data package for Captain Zalthos. Everything we know about the void. Our technological schematics, combat strategies, and Colonel, include the Alliance protocols." "Ma'am, are you sure?" "Sharing QDE technology." "The void is everyone's enemy," Elena said. "Not just humanity's. If the collective wants to survive what's coming, they need to be able to fight. And that means we share everything. No secrets, no hidden weapons. We're all in this together now." She turned back to Zalthos. "Captain, take our data back to your collective. Tell them that humanity is alive, that we've been preparing for this, and that we're offering an alliance, not just with us, but with every species we've awakened, every civilization the void tried to erase." "An alliance against the void," Zalthos said. "An alliance for survival," Elena corrected. "Because make no mistake, Captain, the void will come for your worlds eventually. They always do. But now for the first time in galactic history, there's a force that can stop them. A coalition of the supposedly extinct, the allegedly impossible, the deliberately forgotten." She extended her hand in the ancient human gesture of partnership. "Humanity stands ready to teach your people what we've learned. To share our weapons, our strategies, our understanding of dimensional warfare. All we ask in return is that you stand with us when the real war begins." Zalthos looked at her hand, then at the humans celebrating around him, then at the displays showing a galaxy that would never be the same. 300 years ago, humanity had vanished. Today, they'd returned not as refugees or victims, but as warriors carrying weapons that could reshape reality itself. He clasped her hand. "The collective will stand with you. I'll make sure of it." "Good," Elena said, "because what comes next is going to make today look like a training exercise. The void thinks they're eternal, unstoppable, the end of all things." She smiled, and there was something fierce and wonderful in that smile, the smile of a species that had turned extinction into a 300-year preparation for the greatest counterattack in galactic history. They're about to learn that humans don't do endings. We do sequels. And this one's going to be spectacular. Across the galaxy, in hidden installations and awakening civilizations, humanity's long sleep was ending. The ghosts were returning, and the void, which had terrorized the universe for uncounted eons, was about to face something it had never encountered before. An enemy that had learned from defeat, adapted in darkness, and emerged from extinction with 3 centuries of accumulated spite and technological miracles. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly according to plan.